I was reading about the latest movie director who's being investigated for abusing the actors who worked on his picture. The story says the director had been under scrutiny for months after several actors on his project accused him of being abusive and creating a toxic working environment. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but what about those pursuits that turn soft, lazy people into strong, capable people? Marine boot camp, for example. Everyone knows that's tough. Tougher than a movie set. In the present state of society, I wonder how long it will be before karate instructors are sued for creating a toxic environment. Especially those male teachers, those paragons of the patriarchy, oozing toxic masculinity with their grunts, growls, and violent movements. Maybe they should also be sued by the lumber industry for contributing to a housing shortage with all the boards they've broken. I experienced a training environment that was, if not toxic, pretty darn close to it. And maybe some of you have too. The authentic karate training I did for my first 22 years had a Japanese tradition of special trainings. Twice a year, members of our organization would gather at locations in the East or West Coast or in the Midwest for a 3 or 4 day torture test. Each day found us up before dawn, running for miles barefoot out in the snow before coming back into the gym and starting the training day. Of course, first we'd pick all the gravel, briars, and broken glass out of our feet. Each practice was hundreds of repetitions of a particular thing. One was 1,000 stepping thrusts. Another was 1,000 kicks. Another was kumite, where you circled around and sparred the person in front of you until sensei gave the command, and then the line rotated until you had faced everyone in the room. Sometimes we went around twice. There were typically about 50 people there, so you fought 50 to 100 times. Kata practice was 100 repetitions of the form. And then there was kibadachi practice. We had to hold a low horse stance without moving for an hour and a half. If we started to creep up to relieve the pain, you were quickly corrected. Seniors would shout encouragement to everyone, and everyone struggled, and the pain was unreal. People vomited, people passed out. I saw one guy fall unconscious, and his legs were still locked in the stance. One year, my sleeping bag was next to Sensei's, and he was writing in his daily log at the end of the day, and he nudged me and showed me the entry. We had done kibadachi stance for 2 hours and 6 minutes. He thought we were such a strong group, he wanted to push it, he said. I'm convinced at this point that the best thing this kind of karate training does for you is magnify your willpower and give you confidence. It does make sense to have tough training and high repetitions to gain the skills, but that's because it takes a lot of repetition for the standard karate movements to become natural. And it takes exhausting sessions to make your muscles so tired that you're left with only the most efficient way to move, which ends up being the most effective. I get that. But once you gain that, it doesn't take that much to maintain it. In fact, it takes a few repetitions several times a week to keep that level of skill. Look at it this way. You don't have to review your alphabet every time before you write a letter, do you? You take the language skills you've learned and continue to apply them in new ways. You don't write the same thing every time. You use your knowledge of the language to express new and different thoughts every time. But standardized karate training, an awful lot of it is dedicated to saying the same thing every time, isn't it? And the guys I trained with who really took to the special trainings, some of them traveled across the country so that they could attend all the regional sessions for both summer and winter seasons. Even the head of the organization told me, some of those guys are crazy. The reason that tough training is resorted to again and again in many groups is not simply because it's a traditional way to train. At least for the Japanese it is. Okinawans are a little bit different. The hidden reason is because it causes the same cultish loyalty to the sources of the tough training. How many of you karate guys have said, boy, Sensei was brutal with us, but I sure am lucky to have trained with him? This is a very common sentiment. I'm so lucky he beat up on me so much. When we used to come back from special training, you couldn't go back to work. You had to recover for a week. And yet we all said, I'm so glad I did it. We felt like superhumans in the midst of a whole society full of cream puffs. None of the people we knew could endure such a thing. So the only way to cope with a society that was not like us was to get back with the people who understood, our dojo mates, as quickly as possible. The same as the often repeated adage, only a Marine can understand a Marine. Well, only a karateka can understand a karateka. And there's also the phenomenon known to psychiatrists as Stockholm Syndrome, where prisoners of war are tortured and yet develop a fondness for their captors. I can't help but feel that some of this enters into the way karateka feel about hard training. Well, I've been through tough training, and I've seen tough karate, and I've seen cream puff karate, and I can tell you that it isn't a matter of either or. By all means, do something tough for you, something hard to complete, outside your comfort zone, as they like to say today. Build a strong will to not quit, to not let pain or fatigue or just fear to stop you. That's great. Just don't think the skill that you got from it was bestowed upon you by the source of the training. You did that on your own. Give yourself some credit. So what's our basic argument or difference with traditional method of karate training? The typical training is for one type of person only, the extraordinary individual, who's prepared both physically and mentally to endure a rigorous, lengthy training period. The insistence on this method of training eliminates the people who need karate the most. This happens in both the sport and the traditionally oriented classes. It's as though tennis were to be introduced to this country with the stipulation that only those who are prepared to become championship tennis players need bother to learn. People who get victimized aren't Olympic contenders, and they don't become athletes just to get people to stop attacking them. This is why millions of small, old, or weak people watch martial arts movies and get a thrill, but never consider trying to do that because they know inside that they can't. I want those people to know that it isn't a matter of you do it this way or you don't do it at all. We train in a way that almost anyone can, and it's designed to be very natural and takes very little effort. Because of that, it's very effective for self-defense. There's no relying on muscle, endurance, or speed. And just to prove a point, we don't have anyone in our group under the age of 50. I'm 68. Confidentially, I would love to be 50 again. Check out karatehack.net if it isn't too tough for you.